Alright, let's dive into something that's been buzzing in the news lately: the dismissal of the seditious conspiracy case against members of the Oath Keepers tied to January 6th. But before we get into the nitty-gritty, let me just throw this out there. What does it say about our justice system when a case as significant as this gets dismissed, especially after convictions were already handed down? Personally, I think this is one of those moments where the legal system feels like it's at odds with the public's sense of accountability. So, let's break it down. First off, the hook here is that a federal judge, Amit Mehta, basically had to throw out the case at the request of the Trump administration. But here's the kicker: he did it reluctantly. In his ruling, he didn't hold back, calling out the move as something that diminishes the gravity of January 6th. And honestly, that's what makes this really interesting. It's not just about the legal technicalities, it's about the message this sends. When a judge appointed by a Democratic president feels compelled to criticize a decision like this, it's a sign that something deeper is at play. What this really suggests is that the dismissal isn't just a legal footnote, it's a political statement. Now, let's talk about the pardons and commutations. Trump's sweeping pardons last year essentially wiped out a lot of the January 6 cases, including those involving violent assaults on police. But here's where it gets tricky. Stewart Rhodes, the founder of the Oath Keepers, didn't get a full pardon, just a commutation. And yet, the Biden administration's DOJ moved to vacate his conviction. From my perspective, this feels like a strange middle ground. On one hand, you've got the Biden administration, which initially celebrated these convictions as a victory for justice. On the other, they're now effectively undoing that work. What many people don't realize is that this isn't just about Rhodes or the Oath Keepers, it's about the precedent it sets. If you take a step back and think about it, this raises a deeper question: are we saying that certain crimes, no matter how serious, can be excused for political expediency? One thing that immediately stands out is Judge Mehta's frustration. He wrote that the government was asking to absolve these defendants of crimes against the United States itself. That's heavy. And yet, he had no choice but to grant the request. It's like the system is tied in knots here. In my opinion, this is where the legal system feels like it's failing to meet the moment. The peaceful transfer of power is a cornerstone of democracy, and January 6 was an attack on that. To see convictions tied to that event get dismissed feels like a betrayal of that principle. Now, let's talk about Trump's role in all this. He's framed the pardons as a way to end a grave national injustice and start a process of national reconciliation. But here's the thing: reconciliation doesn't happen by erasing accountability. Personally, I think this is a classic example of political spin. Over 1,200 people were convicted for January 6 crimes, and many of them pleaded guilty to assaulting law enforcement. To dismiss or commute sentences for those involved in orchestrating the violence feels like it undermines the entire effort to hold people accountable. What makes this really interesting is how it ties into broader trends: the polarization of our justice system, the politicization of law enforcement, and the erosion of trust in institutions. A detail I find fascinating is that Rhodes, who didn't even enter the Capitol, has described himself as a political prisoner. His attorney criticized Judge Mehta for injecting personal opinions into the ruling, but honestly, that's missing the point. The judge's comments weren't just personal, they were a reflection of how this decision feels to a lot of people. It's not just about Rhodes or the Oath Keepers. It's about what this says about our commitment to justice and accountability. So, where does this leave us? The book on January 6 is officially closed, according to Judge Mehta. But in my opinion, this isn't the end, it's just a new chapter. This raises a deeper question: what does accountability mean in a deeply divided nation? And more importantly, What does it mean for the future of our democracy? If we're willing to dismiss convictions for crimes that threaten the very foundation of our system, what's next? That's the question I'm left with, and honestly, it's a pretty unsettling one. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below.